Is that you?
Yeah. Real quickly, I'm not going to reiterate what we've been listening to for the last several weeks, but what is important is after Don Williams made his presentation, he suggested and we have a Roads to Prosperity Amendment resolution. And what we are asking for is the cities and the county commission next week, and the cities, and also I've asked the WVU student body government to look at this resolution and put it in front of their group and vote on it. I think the key being that we would have the cities, the Board of Education, and the county all together explaining the importance of passing this. We're talking about a $230 million right now for Mon County. At the same time, we're looking at 7,000 cars being taken off the roads to be put on, out of the neighborhoods, the congestion, the safety factor, and then he surprised us today with this document that said that if we now have the $230 million, I guess they've already collected $100 million in the revenue already collected from the driver's license and the gas tax, that we're now talking about another $100 million that could be spread out. And one of the things he was saying is probably, we get more questions than anything else, is all the different areas now that they are looking at Van Boris Road and finally doing the whole thing rather than just a portion of it. And you can see what they're planning on doing. But what's really nice is it's $230 million just from the bond. Then we have $100 and some million for the Garvey bonds, and then the roads that are already being done. And it's just what I call a no-brainer. And I just hope that next week, if you could pass that on to your council or boards and ask them to vote on it, so we all support it. And again, the taxes are already in place. I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, but we really hope that you'll be able to do this.
The presentation that Don Williams made today is actually going to be on the County Commission's website, a link to it. It was an excellent presentation. He really did a marvelous job of just making it, it's a lot of information. It's really somewhat mind-numbing, all the numbers and all the roads and everything he was going through, but he made it, broke it down into layman's terms. So it was an excellent presentation. It'll also be on West TV. On
West
YouTube.
TV, well, West TV's doing it, and also going to be on YouTube, so we're going to have different links so anybody. It's only 25 minutes long. The other thing that we did want to share with you, that the County Commission came up with an idea with Don Williams and the Secretary of the Roads. We came up with an idea of if we gave them $150,000, what could we do for our community? And 7.5 miles, they said they could do River Road and do the ditching for 7.5 miles. They would not have to, they would already be done by using our funds. So we're going to try this project. We're going to see how much it's going to cost. We have $150,000 going in, and if this works, we're going to look each year of doing different kind of joint programs. And they also said any city that might want to do this, like the city where we want to do something, say, a beach or something like that, it's something that they would consider. But the new director has now allowed us to do this. We couldn't do this up until this year, and hopefully, this is successful. We could have done, 7 miles of paving, but we thought that no one ever does really the ditching in this way. It can get done, and then they can fix the road. So that's just one other thing that we're now doing.
Yeah, and adding to what Tom said, this is just another way of thinking outside the box. This is something that's probably on a priority scale the DOH wouldn't get to for a while.
Right.
We can give them money to subcontract the work out because they don't have the facility, the personnel to do this at the time. So we would address two of those issues at the same time. And the amount was something we said, okay, we'll just start out. Like $150,000, we'll put that forward and see what we can do. And we let them pick the project. Right. We had them, go through and what could we do, where could we get the most bang for the buck. So it wasn't directed any specific. They looked at where they get the most complaints. And this particular section of River Road does get a lot of complaints. Yeah. So again, they're going to get us the contract paperwork, and we're going to start scouring through it and see how quickly we can get this in place.
And people don't know, they let out the bid for River Road, over $1 million, to finally fix it really, rather than just pave it. they are actually gonna redo the road. So this isn't the same area, but I did
We're
want,
talking about mobilization within the next 90 days, and it should be done by June of 2018.
yes.
We, in our last CBB board meeting, our board went ahead and voted in favor of supporting this bond in October. And I know the ask is to go out and ask all of the organizations, you know, the different groups that we all represent, to actually get out there and kind of get the message out through our organizations, you know, sending that same message. So, any other questions?
The governor spoke to a meeting that Ron and I attended this past weekend, and he was asking for negatives in relationship to what's going on. He and Commissioner Smith both talked. He said there are two things that they keep hearing. Number one is the southern part of the state isn't getting anything. And he was very clear to show the southern part of the state is getting their fair share. So to spell that rumor. He said the only other negative they're hearing is the indebtedness toward the state over the next 10, 15, 20 years. However that might be. Some of the comments would be, why would you bond out the state for that many years? He said so, but when you look at the job growth, when you look at the money that's involved, he said that should easily negate the others. So if you hear some things, maybe you can kind of address those as well. But those are the two big negatives that were voiced at our meeting. There's probably about 300 people there, about 200 some people there. So
There's also a map in Don Williams' presentation of the entire state, and it has essentially different colored dots that are projects either that are a result of all of this process. And there's dots in every projects in every county throughout the state, and there were certain colors meant certain things out of different, you know, types of tiers of projects and timing and all that sort of thing. So that map alone was very, had a very strong visual impact. If you saw, I mean, it just looked like someone took paint and just all over the place. I mean, I don't even remember the number of projects that they listed, but it was very helpful. Even if you got lost in all the detail that he was talking about, you could look at that and it was very easy to see the impact of what's proposed. So.
And one other point, an important point that he made in the presentation was something Frank kind of alluded to, is the cost of not doing this now. If you look at, you know, bonding this stuff out and getting these projects jump-started and getting them done now, they have all kinds of statistics that over the past 5 years, the cost of construction has gone up over 65%. So if you do these things now, you know, there's a utility of saving all those dollars than if we go the regular route, in which there are taxes that will fund these things. It's just that it's going to take a long time to fund these projects, and it's going to cost a lot more the longer we wait.
There's two things. One is Johnny Williams will be speaking at meeting of the whole on the 26th of this month in council chambers. And two, that there is some momentum. The League of Women Voters has come out for it, and also the Municipal League, the West Virginia Municipal League.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good.
So there is momentum.
Just need to get the rest of the state.
We just get people to vote.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that. Anything else in the road bond? Okay. Mylan Park. Ron? Jamie? You're up?
So we know we'll be very conscious of time because we want to try to keep under the time, but at the same time, staying back, we've got a lot of information to share with you, and obviously want to answer any questions. So we'll try not to be lengthy, but at the same time, cover everything that we need to cover. And because we have a lot of new people, we wanted to kind of walk back all the way in time to where we started and to where we are today. And one of the big reasons to do that is, you know, there's so many times in our organizations through government that you have meetings and you throw things against the wall and maybe they don't stick or maybe the projects are too big. But this is certainly a project that literally came to be as a result of this group. And I'll kind of explain that. So if you back all the way up, there was sometime in August or September of 2013 that WVU, we don't we have a track, and we have a women's track team, but we've not held a track meet for years at the track. But it was mainly a community walking situation. And we had some things that had happened there with some liability issues because between animals and people and destruction and some other things, that at some point in time, Oliver Luck had to make a decision that, we've got to close this, we don't have lights on it, we've got a big liability. Well, as a result of that decision and doing what a good county commissioner is supposed to do, at some point in time, Tom Bloom picked the phone up and called Oliver and said, you know what, I don't think that's the best decision. And that's really what prompted Oliver to start thinking about things. So it was sometime in either late September or early October in 13. I was sitting in my office and Oliver called and he said, I've been thinking about, we've had such success with the baseball stadium and working together, and you helped us on that and got us into the county officials and meeting with different people. He's like, my thought is there's a lot of good models out there across the country where the universities and communities share facilities. And he's like, I think we can do that with a couple of opportunities, primarily the aquatics opportunity as well as maybe track. And he's like, but how would I go about making that presentation or talking to someone about it? And I said, well, just so happens there's this community forum group, and I think it was October 23rd.
23rd, 24th.
And I said, why don't you come to that and get on the agenda? Which he did. And he kind of threw the idea out at that point in time and said, hey, we don't want this to be a WVU project, we want this to be a community project, and how can we all benefit? And from that meeting, what happened was, we collectively as a group in that meeting said, we'd like to explore the idea and ask that we could put a group together, bring it to the county commission for approval, and which we did. And they had asked Jambi and I to co-chair that group to really explore if this is even a possibility. So I'm going to kind of hand it off to Jambi at that point. We're in October, late October of 13, and the commission's approved it. And if you want to pick it up and take it from
We
there.
formed a committee, I don't know, it was probably maybe 25 people on it. And you had City of Morgantown, Bow Park, you had WVU, Dr. DeWano was on that committee, Coach Maisie was on that committee, the Rotary, Frank Vitale. We had, it was with an organization structure, and Eldon was the coordinator, facilities was Terry Howes, Economic Community Development was Peggy Meyer-Smith at that time. It was here before Susan. And finance was Marvel Weiss and Ray Walker and those types of people. And so the commission, approved that. And so we all started meeting and started breaking out in different meetings. And we had organizational subgroups, and everybody had a directive and brought back different ideas what they what they could probably do. So and the authority of standing order would be maximized by utilizing legislative action similar to what the model created by Bow Park. And but the group's operating functional body immediately thought throughout the process to seek legislation we didn't really need it because we had the Bow Park model at that particular time. So in April of 14, we had another meeting with this group, and all the stuff come out about it, and we had a community recreation center initiative, and there's a bunch of points. I don't think I need to go over them all, but anybody has questions, I have. And then in the meantime, we brought Brick Street in after that, and then Brick Street come out and they give us another proposal on what could possibly happen. There was two different groups, I think, that had our group. There were 7 groups, and we had to pick 2 of them. They all produced, this is throughout meetings throughout this whole time,
and the different groups come out with, they had some really good ideas. And at that time, Bow Park, or the plan of Bow Park was where this thing was gonna go. It was gonna stay within the city limits. And, but then they decided that that wasn't probably gonna work for them, because we looked at White Park, we looked about doing Mississippi Street and closing Mississippi and building an ice rink, and then had to maybe remove a couple of trees here and there, and people just wasn't for that, and then make that, up that utility line, you know what I'm talking about there? We talked about putting a new road to bypass the back street opposite, so it would have to go through where the new complex was gonna be. And the parking was gonna be, and Dr. Vano, suggested maybe even using after hours, the school, boat tech and that area over there to park for this new building, and then maybe eliminating one of the softball fields and use that for some parking, and because they were gonna lose that whole parking lot. That's where the new ice rink was gonna go. And then that was one part, and then the other one was, I can't remember the name of the street, but it was down by the reservoir, and then there was like a big open space down there somewhere. But they said that would never work either. So then we got, I think we had Brosford and Dunleavy. They come on board with us and give us a lot of ideas, a lot of different things, and they had a strategic plan, an aquatics feasibility plan, a Parks and Recreation master plan, and they were putting all this stuff together for us. And we have all the documentation on all the things that we had there. And then on June the 4th, Commissioner Bartolo, was president of the commission at that time, talked about what we needed to do next, and that basically come into a trip down to Christiansburg to look at the aquatic center and the aquatic center down at Christiansburg that Virginia Tech used, and Radford University also used. So we had a plane. The plane took us down, and of course, Jeff McCorsky was representing the city at that time, and Jeff couldn't go. He had an emergency or something, he couldn't get out of it. But there was myself and Ron, Vic Riggs, Sam Stone, and Oliver. And us five went down, and Jeff was supposed to go represent the city on that, but unfortunately he couldn't make it that day. And so we went down and brought all the stuff back that we found and made some reports with it. And basically we get out to the next next group, which is this group here. This was meeting down in Ron's office, or next to Ron's, down at his place. It was August the 5th after that trip. And then we started meeting every other month with this group. So on August the 5th, we put another group together, and on that group, it was the mayor of Morgantown, which was Jenny, and Tom represented the commission, and Bow Park was there, Mylan Park, Greg Morris, Ron was representing WVU, Alan O'Connor. Yeah, I know, I got it. And then all, and Peggy, CVB was involved, and Jim Craig, and that was with the YMCA. Jim was interested in the YMCA, and Sheep Lake Rotary was interested in the YMCA at that time. So that's all, and then as that got fleshed out, basically Jim sort of thought that this may have been a better way to go. And the city thought that may have been a better way to go. So that's where we are basically today.
Yeah, that gives us some history. One of the things, so that kind of brought us up to the end of, after we were able to go to Christiansburg and keep everyone engaged, kind of brought us up to December and the Brick Street proposal. And where we went then, they did a fantastic job, Brick Street did, and they had community meetings, which we had large gatherings. We had one at Mylan Park, we had one at Cheat Lake, and we had one at the Marilla Center. And we had over 400 people attend those. And also during that time period, Brick Street did a community assessment where they gathered over 1,000 responses as to the needs in the community. At the same time, what this committee did is put together our recreation facility inventory, which we have a copy of. And so that it's not ironic, it is doing your due diligence. So what came to the top in this community that we lacked, and there was about 5 major things, but The number one was an indoor swimming pool, a public indoor swimming pool. Number two was track and field opportunities, because I think at the time, and maybe still to this day, we have maybe 5 or 6 schools using a middle school track, and the WVU track was inadequate. The third was ice, that we at least had an ice facility, but there was a bunch of room for expansion. Number 4 was soccer and multi-purpose fields. So we said, well, we can hone in on these things and try to make that happen. So after the Brick Street report, what we did is we broke into first, sometime in late November, we had a meeting with Jeff McCorsky, and we said, here's where we're at. They have told us through Brick Street and all these other groups that we've got to have 15 to 20 acres for this project to work. And we don't want to do it at WVU because we don't want it to be a WVU project. So there's two, Marilla Park was too small because there was only about 10 acres that could be used for the expansion of Marilla. So Jeff actually identified a really nice flat place in White Park. If you're in the Aldi store, it's right up the hill
Right,
from
you
Aldi.
can see it, I guess.
And then the other location that Brick Street pointed out was Mylan Park, because there was a lot of land. So we went to Jeff in November and had a sit-down meeting with him, and we said, Jeff, we're at this point, and I'm not trying to throw Jeff under the bus, I'm just telling you how everything happened. So we're at this point that we need to know, this land has to be thrown into the deal. It's a free, we can't afford to pay the land cost. Do you think that, that would be appropriate for the city to do that? And basically his response was, no, I don't think it would be. And we said, okay, that's what we needed to know. So in December, when Brick Street delivered their deliverable to us, their recommendation was we split this and we take the aquatic and the track to Mylan, we take the ice and community recreation to White, and then they gave us a plan for White Park as well as Mylan Park. So they finished their work. So now we're at a point of saying, where do we go from here? And they had great community assessment. So one of the top companies in the world that did our community rec center, our rec center at WVU, did the baseball stadium, did Marshalls, they've done things, is Brailsford Dunley. And they had actually been in here about 15 years ago and did a community study. And we asked them to go out and do a feasibility study for us. And what we wanted to do, we used the Christiansburg model and said, we would like to have something comparable to this. And in fact, at Christiansburg, they said, these are things we would do in a different way if we had to do over, and they were very helpful. In fact, they even gave us their floor plans. I mean, they said,
Here's their finance mistakes they made.
Here it is. So what we also charged Brailsford with, that the goal of this project was we wanted it to be community oriented, number one. We wanted, number two, to have a health and wellness focus in the project. Number three, affordability was critical, whether that be family memberships, whether that be kids that can't afford it, being able to get into the facility. We wanted it to be affordable. We did not, and we wanted it to be open to the public. So they then took the charge and went running with it. In the meantime, we interfaced, so that committee steered to Mylan Park. Melissa Birch took the committee that was the ice and the multi-purpose fields in the other part, and went that direction with it, and we all worked in tandem,
for a long time,
working on it. So at some point, about 3 months into it, and one of the things at Brailsford, we told Brailsford, we think we can maybe build this thing, but you need to tell us if we can operate it. Because building it's one thing, but
paying for
it's a different thing to
Keep it
operate.
Right.
So one of the things that they told us from the beginning, that the first thing we have to establish is that wherever this place is located, they have to do a 15-mile radius around that, just to look to see if we've got the population base and look at competitive facilities in that. So fortunately for us, we had the population base, number one. Number two, we really had no competitive facilities. So that came back with a green light. At that point in time, we said, then we need to, they did some additional community assessment, which, again, they had public meetings and collected, and the same information basically came back that Brick Street told us, and that is, there is a need in this community for these facilities. So one of the things that we really, we've ran this up the flagpole about 3 times in this community, and we didn't want to get out there again and try to run it up when we couldn't do something. So we wanted to really do our due diligence. And about that time is when we said, we need to bring Paul Walker on board and get Paul to start to give us some renderings and thoughts about, what something like this really would cost. And Christiansburg had given us their costs, but they were 5 years prior and some other things, and we've got a track included. So it's kind of funny, Oliver and I talked the other night, and we were laughing about it, and he blames this on Tom Bloom. But initially, when we started talking about this, and these are Oliver's numbers, we thought we could do the aquatics part for about 30 million. And he thought we could do the track for about $1 million. And we were pretty close on the aquatics. What we weren't close on was the track, and that's because, and the good thing is, it came about as a lot of community input where, we ended up saying, no, we don't want a track like we have over there where we've got a blacktop surface painted. If we're going to do this, let's go to the University of Tennessee and look at what they did, which is one of the state-of-the-art tracks. So we engage Paul. Paul comes on board, and the first thing, we have a big meeting at the Coliseum with a bunch of people. And Paul walks into that room and lays it all out, and he says, your cost is $40 million. And we kind of shuddered and said, Paul, you need to go sharpen your pencil and get us down to that 31 million that Oliver was talking about. So from that point, Paul did do that. But then we had these community groups that met. Tom led the track group, Eldon led the community pool group, Narvel and Craig Walker led the finance group. I forget who led the
WVU's women's
swim coach.
Yeah.
Vic led the aquatics group. And they then engaged all the high school coaches and parents and others to come up with ideas of what this should look like. So that then takes us fast forward to sometime in mid-15. At that time, we had to pay Paul a little bit for doing, and we were able to pay him then, so which was good. And but I want to come back to that because one of our thrusts in all this has been we want to use local people to do these jobs, whether it's architectural, engineering, construction, whatever that is, we want our local people to be engaged. And Paul has been a great community partner throughout all this. So once we finished that and we went through all the, and we got into way down in the weeds on some of that stuff, should we have, we talked about wind at the track, and we talked about extra deck space and we talked about canopy seating, and we talked about a warm-up lane for the track, and how do we have field events and track events going on. We talked about the community track. So all that stuff was vetted for about the next 6 months, which came back, and Paul was able to literally take all the community. I do not think there is one thing that people said, this is what we want, that we weren't able to put in this whole facility. So at the end of the day, what we came out with was we have a recreation pool that is community use, community-based. We have what we're calling a competitive pool that is, again, community-based. We have a track that is going to be state-of-the-art. We have an outer ring track for community use because a lot of people like to walk and do health and wellness type programs. So you can have a track meet going on and not have to close down. And that was one of the things that we took away from Christiansburg, because in their rec pool, they said, well, here's what happens when Virginia Tech or Radford have a meet, we got to shut down the community pool because they need to use that for the warm-up. Well, when we came back, we said, we don't want that happening, that there's no competition or anything more than this community pool. So Paul was able to achieve that. The other thing was we wanted a separate diving well, which we saw. And that was one of the big things that they said.
That was the biggest thing they talked about their pool.
And why that is important for the community is you can have things like scuba. When we were there, we saw first responders in the deep end of that pool working on water rescue, but the way they had it within the same facility, you couldn't then have swim teams practicing. So by having a separated diving well, we were able to do that. So when it all flushed out and Paul came back and said, here's where we're at, we kind of went in a big circle because that 31 million number was still at about 40 million. And we said, okay, if that's the number, and let's go figure out how we do this. From that point, it took us roughly, and I will say this, the Hazel Ruby McQueen Trust, this project would absolutely not be possible without it. And this is the biggest gift that they've ever given in their history. And they have been very engaged, but we had to do our due diligence for about 6 months prior to that application going in to show the community benefit. Once we did that, they made a commitment of $15 million, which then we were able, and the committee's work was all done, so we kind of had this silent period that the finance group had to go put the numbers together to make it all work. So people were wondering at the time what's happening with the Aquatic Center. And God bless Ben Conley, but that poor guy had me on speed dial about once a month. We got an update. No, we're still trying to figure it out. So, and to his credit, you know, he was doing exactly what he should be doing, but it took us a long time. So the first, we thought we had a plan on December 31st of 2016. The Hazel Ruby McQueen Trust delivered the first funding to the project. From that point, we were working with the USDA, and we felt very good about it, and we started doing the due diligence that they needed us to do. So the good news in this project, we did all the due diligence that a USDA financing would require. That's environmental assessments, additional core drilling, I mean, Paul can name them all. And as we started to progress, the plan was, let's get this financing in place by March. And they were wonderful at this local office to work with. But they came back to us in March and said, well, we have a problem because we have been operating on a federal continuing resolution, and the new Trump administration would like for us to no longer operate that way. They want the passage of a budget, and it looks like it's going to be July before you can put your application in, which made us all shudder because if we didn't get out of the ground by July, it would probably have ran the cost up on this project quite a bit. So we still started down that road, and then they came back and said, no, it's probably going to be October before we know this coming October. So at that time, again, Huntington Bank has been a great partner. Chad Prather went out and we said, let's go see if we can do a private placement. So we were able to do a private placement and make all the financing work and the whole model work. So again, with those primary concerns, affordability, community use, and so sustainability, and that's where we're at. So Paul will walk you through, and again, all this planning, you know, it's not just the swimming pool. I mean, we made sure that we have classroom, what we call classroom space, where everything from nutrition and health and wellness. There's 2 big spaces, that cardio. We've been well advised on how to put this together. And the other thing I should mention is then we went to 4 other communities on this side. They went to a bunch more on the track. But Cary, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, and I forget the community in Florida. And we looked at these facilities, which are like facilities. And actually, we probably are going to be a one-up on a few of those. And we've got a real confidence that this could happen. In fact, they reported today that at the Greensboro facility, I don't know if you were at the meeting, that they were so successful on their new addition that they paid off in 2 years. Vic Riggs reported that today. So anyway, we didn't only look at the Christiansburg model, but we also looked at a number of models. And that helped Paul put together what Paul's put together. So I'll shut up and let Paul show you the meat and potatoes of it. Is there any questions though on how we got here, or anybody?
Paul, just to keep us on track, we have a little less than 10 minutes.
But before we do this, I want to tell you this. When we signed the
I should have
contract.
told Ron,
You
right?
should.
Sorry.
This is something that I need to say about Paul. Paul took a huge leap of faith, because until we had that financing done, Paul had literally performed a couple $100,000 in work that he knew he wasn't going to get paid for unless we got it done. And he took a leap of faith with us and walked with us the whole way. And so it took a lot of community partnerships, and I wanted to give you the props on, and I want to say that everywhere we can, because not many companies would have done that. So
Well, I appreciate that, but I also knew the character of the people we were working with, and that means a lot too. So, and I'm going to say this, that these are a little fuzzy, and so I have 4 sets of drawings that we can pass around if we need to, so you can look at the detail. And I'm going to 10 minutes, so I'm going to go through this quick. If you have questions, please just ask. I'd be happy to kind of interject. It all starts with a master plan, and it started with the master plan that we developed for Mylan Park. That was kind of the first phase of what we were doing, because we were looking at where we're going to place these structures, how's that going to fit into the context of the overall planning for the development and expansion growth within Mylan Park. So just to kind of walk you through in a broad sense, this is the elementary school. So that we go back down the hill to the interstate. So again, elementary school. So this is the road that goes back. This is the fitness center. These are the existing ball fields that are out there. And the road then continues back. There's a couple of ball fields that are there. And this goes all the way back to where, if you recall, there's an equestrian center on the top of the hill. It's never really been utilized very much from my understanding, but that's the location that was identified for this complex. So let me go into more detail. So this is kind of a focused view of the plan for this wellness development. So what you see obviously is the track and field facility, and then this is the aquatic center with parking and belief. So you come up the hill, you reach the peak of the hill at the top, and then you're seeing all of this development. There's a lot of land adjacent to that that's still prepared, ready for future developments. There's great opportunities that still exist.
When you said equestrian center, is that moving, going away, disappearing, what?
yeah, Bill, we've had a problem with that. We have an equestrian center that we've never had a horse on.
Right.
So probably will just kind of go away for right now and work with the 4-H on.
I remember that being talked about.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would have liked to have brought at least one horse up there to run it around, at least that we met that goal.
That was a promise on the council.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, just to understand the components in a little more detail, the track and field facility has about 1,000 to 1,200 spectator seats. It also part of the study that we did, which involved the very windy conditions that exist up there. By creating this berm that wraps around it and creating kind of a planting wind barrier, if you will, what we're able to also do is offer kind of this expansion of seating, so that if you have a really large event, you can just fill that hillside with folks, and they can really take advantage of that. So again, the track and field on the inside seating here, the press box is near the finish line, which is down on this end. And then this just shows the potential for setting up the tents for teams use and that sort of thing. So all of that's accounted for. There's a fence around the perimeter of this complex. Outside of that fence is the community walking track. So this is going to replace actually having folks walk directly on the track surface. It's going to preserve the life of that. It's going to maintain the quality of that facility. And so all the way around the perimeter of this, is a 6-foot wide surface for folks to walk on, and that can be operational 100% of the time. This facility, the little small facility that you see there, supports the track in that it has ticketing, it has concessions, it has restrooms. Underneath it is a basement space where all of the track items will be stored. So that's the the concessions and everything that go along with that. And then in the back of the property is the aquatic center, and we'll get into that in detail, but you can see kind of the outdoor tear space. Because one of the things in Christiansburg that they really like was this, you know, really abundant outdoor space and giving people the opportunity not just to be inside, but on really nice weather, they can get outside. In our case, we have a splash zone for the younger kids, so it's like, you know, just a lot of fun on the outdoor space without actual swimming activities, but that's going to be located there. Again, a little bit small, so I'll just have to walk you through, but again, you can look at the plans if you want. This is our front door, this is that splash zone. I was just, as a point of reference, that's what I was just pointing out to you. So what you're going to see is we have a primary corridor that sort of ties all of the functions together from the front door. So when you come in, you have control, reception, folks to take, to check in and all that. On this side, everything on this side is recreational. So what you have are swimming lanes, you have, water basketball, you have, again, more implements that dump water and do all the fun things that folks want, as well as a water slide that's actually a component that slides down this side of the pool. So, and then this is the support for the equipment that supports this pool. This is a concession area, which is positioned in a place where it can serve both indoor and outdoor. So, so we have concessions that'll be a part of this project. And then all down the middle is really the support functions for the pool area. So locker rooms for the public, locker rooms for the swimming and diving team. We have multi-purpose rooms similar to this. It can be subdivided. They can do basically anything you can imagine that they can program in those spaces. They can use those for. It has a kitchen that can support it, so that if there are activities that require food, it's there and ready.
What are the sizes of those rooms?
I would say you're looking at similar to what we're talking about here.
I think 2,200 squares is what I saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was looking at this before, and I think this is a good visual of what those rooms are going to be like.
Each one is size?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, there's one here and one here. And then there's storage, various storage rooms that support both this space and the pool area. And then on this side is really the kind of a large open stair that gets you up to the upper levels, as well as the elevator. So all of that's contained right near the front door. And of course, this is the competition side with a 50-meter pool, and then as we were talking, the separate diving pool here. So when you look at the Olympics and you see the large platform diving features, you have 1 meter springboard, and you have 3 meter springboard, and then all of the various levels. That's what you're going to be seeing in this facility. There is of course, there's a separation between these two. There's a feature referred to as a bulkhead, which is really a divider. It's like a movable divider that can be positioned wherever you need it to be within that pool area. So you can take this 50 meter, you can bring the bulkhead across to the middle. You could have, for instance, one high school team doing a practice here and another high school team doing a practice on this side. It can all be going on at the same time. And probably the bulkhead will be in some position, a lot of the time, just to create more flexibility in the use of the facility.
Paul, what's the width on the pool? The length is 50 meters, but what's the side to side?
It's 8 lane. I mean, it is a true Olympic-sized swimming pool. And a couple of other features that are really important to understand about the facility. One of the things in Greensboro that was a real problem, they had a real issue with the air quality within the space. And so one of the things that we learned about that are what is the best technology that exists to deal with that. And so what we've done is to not only incorporate the standard systems for control of air quality, but we have what's called it's an evacuator system. It's the cutting edge technology for this. So what it basically does, fits into the gutter of the pool and literally pulls the air off of the surface of the pool. So what this means is you never get that chlorine odor and some of the other issues that become almost toxic in the environment that's created there. Greensboro was so bad, they they were having a hard time operating. So they literally came back and put the same system in as a retrofit after the fact. So, yeah, pretty excited about that. And then one other feature, and this is small, but it's really important, is we have this large outdoor storage space. It's kind of an open shed. But the purpose of that is that there's a lot of large items that get used and have to be stored. And, you know, when teams are practicing or when activities are going on, you have floats, you have practice mats, you have just all kinds of items, and they become very large and very consuming of the deck space, which becomes very important. So all of that stuff can be pulled out, undercover, and kept so that it's good and operational. And then finally, this is the upper level. So what you do once you come upstairs in the stair or the elevator, this is basically like a large concourse space, and it's really devoted more toward spectator use. So what you're doing is you're coming out into a large seating gallery where you can seat 12 to 1,300 people. We have restrooms that support those. We have areas where concessions will be set up and various support, as well as administrative functions that support the facility. And then one of the later additions was this cardio room. So we have an exercise fitness center for people that come and are members or want to use the facility. So again, from this level, you enter into the pool from the back side, and you have basically the competition side of that.
I didn't see an elevator.
Yeah, it's right here.
Okay, thank you.
And so this is a rendering of the facility. This is what it will look like. So what you're seeing is you come in the front door, you're entering into that corridor space, and then this is all recreation. So there's huge glass areas that are associated with the recreational pool. On the competition side, lighting can be distraction, it can be a hindrance. So that it's more of a solid box. This is that stairwell that gets you up to the various levels. And so this is, and again, it sits at the very back of the property, and the track is across from it. There we are. We've had, in the past, we've had other renderings of various parts of the building. All of those renderings are really kind of conceptual illustrations of the components. Because of the detail that we're in now, we really want the representation to be accurate. This is accurate. And so some of the other things, they're evolving as we get into the final details of like the recreation pool.
Two very, very brief, because I know we have to move. So one of the reasons we added the cardio where it was, you can overlook the pool where the kids would be, but mainly we had senior groups like Ollie and others that said, two things that we would like. We'd like to have that meeting space, and we don't want weight facilities. We want more of the cardio, so that was designed. And maybe the more important thing that, although we told Paul to design an Olympic pool, and we think about that as being one of the key components of this, and WVU using it in high school teams. But quite frankly, from the very beginning of Mylan Park, and Frank's one of our board members, one of our primary missions, we have over 300 people a day with special needs, disabilities, that use this facility. And when we went into this, one of the things that we told Paul, don't design it to host the NCAA regionals, design it to host a Special Olympic National. Paul can tell you that, right, Paul? That was his charge. It'd be great to host that, but we're not going to lose sight of what our mission is, and that is that this needs to be available to all people in the community, and we're going to stick to our mission. So thank you. If y'all have any questions, we'll be happy to meet with y'all individually or anytime.
One more thing, how many 1,000 parking spaces?
We could accommodate 1,000, but the paved spaces is probably more like 300 or 400.
But then you'll be.
Yeah, we have lots of other overflow parking.
We're able to park enough cars there.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. We'll make this quick so we have time for questions, just so we can wrap a few things up. The next thing was the Greater Morgantown CBD Convention Visitors Bureau's September events, and just kind of a real quick update. September and going into October is a huge month for us, and I have some fun stuff to hand out. What we've done is we've actually gone ahead and put together several what would normally be local community events, and by tying them together, these are actually bookmarks, you're more than welcome to hand them out, take them wherever, I've got more of these. By grouping them together, we've actually put together something that we can recruit and recruit tourism, sell to new people coming into the communities, spending new dollars, spending one more night here. It starts off with September 22nd, which is actually Fall Family Weekend. We're going to have the Fall Family Weekend coming into town. We have the Arts Walk on the 22nd. We have the WVU Jazz Band and World Music Ensemble at the Hazel Ruby Amphitheater down on the river. On the 23rd, the Morgantown Marathon is going to be running all of their races on one. Did I say one? Yes, one day. And it's going to be starting early in the morning. They're staggering them, so it's going to be morning, mid-morning, early afternoon. And then also on Saturday, we have a new event called Hops on the Mon. That's a craft beer festival that's being held at the Marriott. And it's actually the first year for it, but they have great plans to make it a serious regional event year after year. And also on Saturday, we wind that up with West Virginia Wine and Jazz Festival. And that is a Saturday and Sunday event. So we're going to be really, really busy. And then the following weekend, because I did say September's very busy, the following weekend is what we all have come to love and know as the Buckwheat Festival in Preston County. And in addition to that, on the following Saturday, which is the 30th of September, we have another craft beer festival, and this is at the Mon County Ballpark. It's called Home Runs and Hops. So our month of September is busy, 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 busy. Another thing that we're doing that we're super excited about, besides I have some really awesome mints that have our website on it, so I'd like everybody to take some. Ron likes them. And they have our website on it, so I encourage everybody to go ahead and sign up on our website to get our newsletter and get our information. The Convention and Visitors Bureau is a sales organization. We are here to sell our region. That's what we do. We generate leads, we interact with leads, we bring people here, we give them things to do, we educate them. So we are here to really complement what you all have put together in our grand community and have to offer as we bring new things here and work with existing things and make them bigger. So I'm here to share my mints. It has my website on it, so please share that. And the really exciting thing we're doing is 5 years ago, there was an awesome program that was started by some community citizens called the Goodwill City Ambassador Program. And it was the offshoot of some individuals that were concerned about some inappropriate behavior and treatment of incoming fans. So, and we won't elaborate on that, right, Tom? So what they did is they organized a group of volunteers, and there's about 30 to 40 of them. They actually staff every home football game. They interact with the alumni associations of the incoming team. They interact with the incoming visitors. And they man these stations, and they're here to welcome people. They're here to give them information. They deal a lot with people with disabilities, how they get in and out of the stadium, how they move around town, all that sort of thing. Sarah Bishop and Pam Queen and Jean Ferrara, right? They're the three real key people, and Sarah's still with the organization and started off that the city of Morgantown at one time contributed to this program. It's relatively small, and WVU was a major funder for it. This year, due to a number of different circumstances, I had the blessing of getting together with Sarah, and lo and behold, the Convention and Visitors Bureau has embraced this program, and we're going to take all their great practices and everything they're already doing, and we're rolling out our own tourism ambassador program. So I have these really snazzy buttons that I have for everyone. And our real challenge is, I hear this from recruiters all the time, if we can get people here, they love our region. The challenge is getting them to take a serious look at us. So what we're trying to do is essentially piggyback off of the Goodwill Ambassador Program and roll it out through the whole community, because I have a challenge. The city of Roanoke, Virginia, yes, that other Virginia, has a marathon every year, and they're known as the friendliest marathon in the country, which just cooks my goose. So what we're going to be trying to do is try and get people all along our marathon route, as well as roll it out through all of our events, and get people throughout the entire community to really show hospitality. So when you go into a restaurant, or you go into a retail establishment, which I personally have recently, and it happened to be the weekend of Mountain Fest, and I walk in and I say, hey, how you doing? And I'm getting my goods to go to the office in the morning, and they say, oh, we're really busy because the marathon's here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Because if they're saying it to me, and I'm all labeled up, I have my name tag on, I have my CDD stuff, they certainly are saying it to our visitors, right? So we're going to be rolling this out to all of our tourism partners. You all are our tourism partners, as well as hotels, restaurants, retailers, everything. So we're really, really, really busy. I'm going to be doing my municipality meetings, some in September, most in October. So, and my tourism ambassadors, we're giving out these buttons because we have a lot of people say, hey, I welcome people all the time, then you are a tourism ambassador. So we're trying to raise awareness and trying to get out in front of people to promote that positive message. That's pretty much it as far as a CDD commercial.